Okay, good morning everyone and welcome to day 2 of Shoot the Breeze. Hope you all had a fantastic day out on the water yesterday. We certainly had plenty of breeze, which was a great way to start the regatta. I'm going to hand straight over to Speezy, who's going to start outlining the courses today. You haven't had your alert go out yet, but this is what we think the courses will be. Thanks, Speezy.
Morning. I'm just going to start, if you don't mind, with a little bit of housekeeping. There was a protest decision last night that probably, I'll put it bluntly, I believe wasn't in keeping with what we're trying to achieve here. So expect a new exclusion zone to be put out on the end of the runway, because it was quite ambiguous before. It was only during aircraft amendments. Whether that can be done and put in place there now, you'll see them laying some marks out the end of the runway. As the rules were written, unbeknown to me, yesterday you could actually go right up there to the runway. It was ambiguous enough. A boat got disqualified for calling water on there, and we've amended what I believe is an oversight. We haven't amended the whole problem yet, but we are going to, it will be there. I think we're somewhat restricted. I think we've got to pace things now before we start. So at least stand by. And if it's not in place for today, it will be certainly tomorrow. Probably more importantly, I'm just going to go to my phone, excuse me, while I open up. I got quite a... you remember yesterday we were talking about the major exclusion zone down there, and we all know what it's there for. One of our fellow competitors here was actually involved heavily and knew all the parties involved and flew helicopters himself. And this came from, I'm not exactly sure, but a leading person in the military, I believe, is in charge of rescue. And if I sound a bit emotional, it is probably because I am. Morning. This is such an amazing message. It is indeed hallowed ground. It will be forever. I'm personally sorry for the racers. At the same time, I'm also very thankful for the attitude of everyone and the response from the broader community. It comes up in passing. Please pass on my thanks and the unit's thanks to everyone. So, thank you. Anyway, on to a few more pleasant things, not that many of our fallen in a fond way isn't pleasant. Okay, so this, I believe, this is a screenshot of what Dennis was working on up in the race office before. So I'm just going to quickly run through the numbers, but there will be messages. No doubt our phones will start beeping very, very shortly. And we'll run through that and what's going to happen, we believe is going to happen today. So rating, I'll just blow that up. Should have gone to Specsavers. Division 1, rating Division 1, I should say, 12, as is rating Division 2, rating Division 3, 11, rating 4, 11, and Hamilton Island Blue, and is also 11. So they're all starting at off 10 Passage, off the Yacht Club. I'm going to jump in there. I think there will be an amendment, and I think that's on its provision in the sailing instructions. Whether this new amendment to the exclusion zone off the end of the runway affects it, but expect the finish line now to be off the golf club jetty. I'm expecting that to come into play today. Of course, the committee put the finish line in the same spot, and we all would have noticed. I was talking about as recently as yesterday how you can get washed through the line. Some boats had finished. Fortunately, they managed to get a gap where it didn't affect anyone's time, and we were requested to extend the finish line, and there were a few anomalies where, and they couldn't, the race committee couldn't see the sail numbers of the boat at the other end, but that mark was placed. As I said, there's a lot of variables here to keep this racing running. So we've used it before in the past. Expect the finish line to be off the golf club, but just watch your flags, listen to your radios, etc., etc. We then go down to the guys who are starting out the eastern start line. In no particular order, yellow is 8. There's a whole heap of 8s. Everyone else is 8 except non-Spinnaker is 9 and trailer yachts are 9. And would that be? Hamilton Island Multi-Hull White is 9. So the rest of the fleet is 8, with the exception of 3 divisions being multi-hull white, trailers and non-spinny. I think I've been doing this probably for 20 plus years now. I've been the handicapper here for 28 or something like that. And every time you come here, you never stop learning. And nothing was more evident than yesterday. I mentioned that we're subscribed to this latest tide tech thing, and that's overlaid with our expedition, our boat polars and everything like that. For years I've been preaching up here, the tide turns on the edges first. The latest technology that we were seeing yesterday, I'm not steering the boat this year, I'm sitting on the rail next to my nav working out what to do. The tide was literally turning half an hour to 40 minutes later in the middle, as opposed to the edges. We've got all the tide streams and the rivers, there's distinct rivers there and all that, so much so that we've readjusted our guest speakers for the week to try to get a couple of navigators in there, because I'd certainly never stop learning, and I believe as I said, it was amazing to me. I would have been banging on the tide turn straight up against the face of Dent to try to get relief. The guys that went there, we probably put 5 or 6 minutes on them by just sticking to our gauges, sticking to what the actual data said to us. As I said, size out of the boat, angry water, what I call angry disturbed water. If the wave's standing up, it's obviously wind against tide. If the water's smoothing out, the tide's turning, that the breeze is going with the tide. And you could actually see it on the water. Yesterday it was just so distinctive. And in local areas, we'd go another 150 metres over to the west. The breeze is telling me to tax is a 10-degree knock. I'm saying, we've got to cop it. There's another half knot of tide over there, and, it was enough to offset. So how do we find that? If you haven't got all the latest gear and gadgets, well, a lot of people have Navionics or an Equable app on their phone. That'll give you SOG and COG course over the ground. If you're confident enough in your... and those two numbers won't lie. What's happening? It's going up there, down there, and it's pretty accurate. Your boat speed and wind direction and everything else is subject to calibration. So your boat speed, but you find out where the normal is. And what's the easiest way to do that? Well, it's a bit hard around here, but if I was in Sydney Harbour, I'd go and find a bay where I know there's minimal tide relief, or, Moreton Bay, where I know there is no tide. Get yourself next to a buoy where you can see there's no tide, run up and down there, and is that compatible to my SOG speed over the ground? Is that the same as my boat speed? Oh no, it's a little bit under. Well, dial it up, or in your mind, put that offset in. I always said every day we go out, we do a quick audit on our instruments. We'll be motoring out. I'll just say to the boys, motor head to wind. I'll make sure our pound wind angle comes in same as our TWA. Work out where our wind direction is and make sure that goes back to magnetic wind direction. Some of you guys may not have those options or functions, but just a quick audit every day. You can't get away from a hand-bearing compass and the old wet compass that you have on the binnacle or on your pedestal of the boat. So there's 1,000,001 tools that we have, and not all of them need to be high-end stuff that you need a university degree to there. Talking of university degrees, I've got an interesting navigator coming in later the week. He's the new school. Like, we've had traditional guys and girls like Adrian Carlin here. The world is evolving. There's a moving mat. There's a whole new breed, same as life. There's a whole new breed of generation coming in behind us who just think about things differently. Probably haven't had a solid grounding and sip lattes and soy lattes and all that, but that's the way of the world. And there's just a whole new breed there, and if you don't run with it, you get caught behind. So, getting back to today, our start time seemed pretty consistent. I think we're all starting around about 10:45, 10:45-ish. So what does that give us? I'm going to recap on a mistake we made yesterday. As I said, you never stop learning. We're out the eastern start line. They say, oh, look, the tide. And we had a last-minute course change out there. So all our planning had gone in to go around Bainham Island, and all of a sudden we're going around Pentecost and back up here. We still had, I think yesterday's tide was roughly 12:30. So we're starting 11:45, and I mentioned the 12th rule. The guy's going, oh, we can probably ignore the last little bit of the tide. Well, we got smashed, got a good start, came off the line, living there well, couple of tacks. We're racing TP. It's basically one design racing with a bit of a racing differential. One boat that's clearly faster than us all and rates higher. He gets the jump. But all of a sudden, we're backing ourselves. I'm just playing the wind shifts rather than the whole program on the assumption that, heeding the advice, the tide's on the way out, it won't come into play. Well, it was there and we got smashed. We didn't pick it up. Fortunately, we dug deep and got straight back into it. You've got to think outside the square a bit here. Our course yesterday was from up here to there, and the red line showed there, and this red line's just advisory, and then over to Denman Island, which is over near Mull. Mad rush, all the crew were asking, which side's our first set, what are we doing, what's sail, when we're medley running. So the navigator purposely plugs in what was written in the red line in the chart. Well, the course said Pentecost Island, Denman Island. I said, well, are we doing a straight line there? So we were the only actual boat to come around from Pentecost. They went out there, we came out through there, the only boat, we picked up 4 minutes. So it does pay to, and totally legal. I'm sure we had a million other people fumbling for their course sheets and sailing instructions when we did peel off. And we popped out, probably 3 minute gain, which got us half of what we lost, well, more than what we lost, by the earlier error I'd made. Think outside the square. It's all there for everyone to see. Quite interestingly, and I don't know the answer, so around Pentecost, that was also an option for us to go over there, but we weren't prepared with the tide the way it was. That was sort of high risk, that was low risk, and it certainly paid huge dividends. So we basically have, what are we, call it 11 o'clock, a good hour and a half minimum of the tide. We know it's that tide time is probably pretty right on the edges. With what I learnt yesterday, you could probably add half an hour to that in the middle. Half an hour, it's a lot. And I'll give you an example. We were very, very close to having the boat ahead of us on time. He sailed a better race than us all day, but we were just chipping away. We rate a lot lower than him. We hadn't given up. We were digging deep. We had the rest of our fleet pretty well covered on time. And all of a sudden, we knew the tide had to turn, even though it's half an hour late. He got round the top of, where are we? The bottom of Dent, or the southern end of Dent. And just this last little bit, I had him about 6.5, 7 minutes ahead of us on the water. Pretty hard to say. And we were very close. We were within a minute of him on time. Then he's got around there. The tide's compounded. We pushed tide up there, and then we got absolutely smacked the last little bit. We clearly stepped out, and the rich got richer. He got round the corner and was gone. And he finished up, I think he beat us by, we needed to finish within 6 minutes. So we lost probably, hung in and lost 5 minutes there from on the last little bit. The tide is critical. And that was going on the whole time. A couple of our opposition came over to Dent on the advertised time here, thinking they were going to get relief here. We're out here, where these arrows are, still got favourable tide. Half an hour after the advertised time later. And we've got real-time data. And this new program we're running is showing it in real time. It's not just like a snapshot here where I've got an arrow. As the clock's marching on, so is the turning data. We can sort of see the rivers the adverse rivers get bigger and bigger and stronger against us here, and we're still in favourable. So if I've got a knot and a half adverse here and a knot and a half favourable there, it's a 3 knot average, just better part of 40% of what I'm doing. It's a massive turnaround. And then that has the knock-on effect too, that the breeze is tending to get lighter. Of course, my boats, I've got the tide behind us. I've also got 3 knots more breeze over the sails than the guy in here. So instead of dropping off our maximum speed, we're sort of hovering somewhere near it, almost with the wrong sail on. And, we got away with it and they haven't. So plenty to learn there. Is Rowan here yet? Rowan Noseworthy? I have a sailmaker coming. Here he is. So I'm just going to talk about trim today. Our guest speaker, we got a second mic here. Your sailmaker choice, and we're going to be talking about moving forward with programs and what you want to achieve and all that. as a handicapper here for 28 years, I believe I've done a good job. When a guy turns up here, he struggles the first year and finishes 30th and, you know, gets a couple of top 10 spots. He digs in, turns up, smartens his boat up, puts a few new sails in, gets his crew together, and next thing you know, he's sort of 4th or 5th. Next year, he's on top of the podium. Better program. He's played Beat the Handicapper and clearly won because his whole program's got better. I always ask boat people I'm running, is this a 1-year boat, a 3-year boat or a 5-year boat? Well, if you're running a 1-year-old boat, just keep your powder dry and do the minimum. If you're running a 3-year boat, we'll have a spend. If you're having a 5-year boat and your boat's a program and you intend to keep it and want to get up here and get better and evolve there, and your goal might be to do a Sydney Gold Coast race or do a Sydney Hobart in 1 year or 2 years. But someone you need to take along with the ride with that is your sailmaker. And that could be the high-end brands, North, Stoyles, whoever. It doesn't really matter. And I'll just give you this analogy. If I phone up my accountant on Monday morning and want to have a chat, I'm going to get a bill. $400-500 an hour. Phone up my solicitor, $600 or $700 an hour. I phone up my sailmaker on Monday morning, have a chat about things, I don't get a bill. So you just got to work out that rapport with your sailmaker, whoever that is. It's a high-end brand. And here today with me, he's sailing with us on the Maritimo. Israel knows he's the proprietor of MC Sails on the Mid Coast. Make a whole heap of dinghy sails, also services a lot of mid-fleet, well, I say mid-fleet, mid-size yachts and a ball thing, but also a very, very gifted sailor in his own right with the swagger titles to his name. So, Rowan, you know, you've got a customer working in there. The scenario that I painted, it's a 3-year boat. What do we do? How do you take them with you?
I'll have to speak from a perspective of where my primary business is, which is actually youth sailing, particularly at the moment with my own kids. But taking it through a program with kids on small boats versus big boats, it's really just the scale of the program, but the actual goals and what you'd want to achieve are actually the same in the end. Everyone wants to stand on the top step of the podium, I guess. So for me, it all comes down to trying to look at what your crew is, what your boat is, and then optimising everything around that core program. Without that core program to begin with, you're never actually going to get there. If you're swapping crews in and out, if your boat's breaking, all the rest of it, it's very hard to achieve goal number 1, which is actually finishing a race. So that's key for me. I spend a lot of time advising people in smaller boats on what fittings and what load. And I know this is coming from a sailmaker, but it actually is integral to what we can actually pull out of the gear once you actually get them flying in the air. It's all the stuff that leads up to it, the rigging, the choice of masts, the choice of ropes, everything is so important. One of the things that I really focus on is balance in the boat. So even without refining sail shapes and all the rest of it, your boat's got to feel balanced. If the boat is grumpy, it doesn't want to steer, you can't look around because you're spending all your time struggling with it, then that's a key issue. And that's no matter what the boat size is. It could be an 8-foot Sabo or it could be a 100-foot boat. If you can't actually concentrate on what's happening on the water, we've only got wind and we've only got water, despite what's happening in the air, you've really got to have the time and the confidence in your boat that you can sail it and get the best out of it.
This is a new boat to us, a TP52. We just put a new rig in it with new sails, and we're still certainly feeling our way. In fact, yesterday was, I think, the first short race we've done in that boat. We did the Sydney Gold Coast, which is a completely different scenario. Just talk about changing gear was something we were learning all day yesterday and getting better and better at it. Then the comms between the headsail trimmer, yourself on the mainsail, myself, and the helmsman.
Yeah, well, I've only had 3 days on this boat, 2 days of training, and we were using a different mainsail initially till we had our race mainsail arrive. The one that we've put up is the guys used it in the Gold Coast and proved it's a good sail. I had to get my eyes around what I was actually looking for initially. Had great help with our jib trimmer, constant communication on what numbers we actually were really happy with, and then working through, what are the gear changes when we're going through the angry water to make sure that we did get to the bottom. We ran a J3 yesterday, which was good initially, and then we're probably pretty low, at least coming out the bottom end of Denman. And we were able to change gears, runners, all the adjustments that everyone's got on their boats to really get to it. But just that constant communication back and forth, talking to the helmsman, Peter V, who's steering our boat this regatta. Him and I have sailed a lot together and against each other over the years in dinghies. So our communication is pretty close. We know what each of us wants to know.
He tells the mainsheet trimmer what he wants on the helm, how much bite, what's there, too much, not enough. Yeah, I'm right, and then we'll trim around, or the boys will trim around that.
Yeah, we'll get a bit more detailed, I think, as we get more and more comfortable with the boat, as I feel what's going on. But yesterday was really just keep it basic, get everything balanced, and keep the comms open so the numbers were always what we're targeting.
We talked yesterday, I talked earlier, I'm not sure when you actually arrived here, but when that tide changed, it basically changed the breeze. Even though the breeze was still blowing the same in true wind strength, it had actually dropped 3 knots over our deck because our boat had slowed up 1.5 with the tide, or it's 1.5 had turned into 1.5 favourable, it turned into 1.5 adverse, so there was 3 knots. So all of a sudden we're stuck with the wrong sail up. Not that the breeze had changed because the tide had changed, and we had to have a major rethink in a hurry. Yep. So just take what we did, carve down.
Yeah, so it was mainly, we ended up actually Traveller up, which was the initial to get some load back in the helm because it did go a bit soggy, a bit more twist. The car went forward and slightly outboard on the jib. So we opened that slot just to get through that sloppiness while we weren't accelerating. And then we ended up sheeting it quite hard with a bit less runner to actually get the back of the main to stand up a bit straighter. And it did actually, it gave us the range we needed to get around the corner and then pop the chute again, and it was all good.
So hopefully, any questions from Owen? As I said, we've covered a fair bit there in a very short space of time. We won't talk about spinnaker trim or anything like that. We've got the basics. I don't have the messages gone out yet. I switched my phone. They have, with the numbers I gave, right? Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Rowan. Appreciate that. So look, it's all there for everyone to see. Possibly add a little bit of time to that, particularly in the middle. You're in all sorts, if you don't, you're going to have, the whole course, the whole week is designed around the tides. And you'll notice that these numbers, as I said yesterday, were 1 to 7 yesterday. We're increasing numbers as the days go on. Tomorrow will be a bit different because of the long race scenario. They're over at the beginning of the book. But you can actually work out what you're going to be doing the next day. Excuse me. What can we say here? Basically, we know what's going to happen. We know which way we're going to go there. There's no point turning up at the at Lindenmeyer, hang on, we need a spinnaker, let's get the gear around. You can do all that on the way to the start. They're all there for everyone to see. We know the tide's going there, so you're looking to stay out of in the tide if you're going upwind, if the tide's with you, or obviously out of it downhill. And if you're transiting there, Spitfire rock, I think that's Spitfire, yep. Few little bricks off that. And there's just so much information on all these charts. You can see the arrows in the back of our SIs there. I do commend this Tide Tech program to you, those who have half and keen and want to move forward. As I said, I've never stopped Maisie. I'm losing my voice. We'll leave it at that. And thank you very much. And once again, thank you for everyone respecting those exclusion zones out there of Hello Turf. Thank you.